Baby Yoda. Love you, Baby Yoda. You cute little fantasy creature. What's up, everybody? If you're joining, you're probably part of the problem. You know, want to look at all these conspiracy theories. Don't you guys have anything better to do? Seriously. What's up, everybody? Hey, Facebook. Who's watching? Hey, Nash. Hey, Kyle. What's up, Gregory? Hey, YouTube. Rumble. I don't see your comments, but I do appreciate your support. So, we love you, Rumble. I'm going old-fashioned water. Just la agua. El agua. Where are you watching from and how are you doing? And are you excited to look at the 20 conspiracies that were proven to be true? Hey, hey. Hey, Alexandra. We missed you. It's been a while. Welcome. All right, so we're going to watch some video. Actually, I'm watching this for one of these videos I've watched before, and I thought it was at least interesting. But they're mainly meant to be a springboard for discussion. And so it's another gentleman's work. I want to give honor where honor is due. Somebody else put this together. We're just going to watch it together. You know, it's going to be fun. So sit back, grab your beverage. Let me know where you're watching from and what you're drinking. And how you're doing. How was this wonderful Tuesday? We just went and saw, my church and the men in the church went and saw Jurassic World Dominion. And I got a whole bunch of thoughts about it. I thought it was cool. Thought it was good. I was pleasantly surprised. So if you haven't seen it yet, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I was going to do a broadcast on it, but I don't really like watching the spoiler alerts and stuff. So I'd rather wait for a while and then maybe talk about it later. But overall, you know, I think it's pretty cool. Have you seen it? Do you like it? What were your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. That's right. That's right. Not theories, facts, Buck says. That's right. Hey, Buck, welcome. You're absolutely right. And so these were proven to be true, but the point, this is the reason I wanted to do this broadcast. Because the moment you even say conspiracy, there's so much social pressure to move away from that conspiracy camp, and you just the whole conspiracy theory discussion, it illuminates a Bible truth that the broad that leads to destruction, that broad path that leads to destruction is wide and many find it. Like, people just don't want to go against the grain. We're so wired, and I shouldn't say we're. Other people, because not me, I go against the grain. And I hope you will too. And not just be a person that blindly follows the crowd. And totally just ignores all obvious signs and just says, oh, no, that's what the news said it, and I just believe it. Stop doing that. If that is you, don't do that anymore. But I have a feeling, unless our liberty, you guys are already not that. But some of you might be skeptical, and so I wanted to show you 20 conspiracies that are just flat out proven to be true. Now, you see what happens oftentimes. Amen. Yeah, please do, Gregory. Would love to partner with you. That's right, Alexander. You should never do that. Yeah, you should never move unless you're, led by the Spirit of God. And it's just, again, going with the crowd is such a bad recipe. It's not smart, especially when you look at the history of what going with the crowd has led to. So, anyway, the guy that we're going to watch tonight, I haven't watched a lot of his videos. They're kind of like theatrical. They're a little over sensationalized or whatever. But he still provides good information, and it's very short. And so I thought, hey, let's watch it. So let me get a nice little thumbnail here. That's my conspiracy thumbnail, if you guys are wondering. Let's jump right into it. So we're going to watch two videos, and they're part 1 and part 2 of 10 conspiracies that were proven to be true. So there's a part 1, and then he comes back for a part 2. I figured I'll just make your life easy. We'll just watch both of them together, and we'll stop along the way and comment on it. But Okay, let me give you a tiny bit of the why behind this. Again, most of you probably already know, but there's new people coming into Let's Talk Liberty, and so I want to make sure all you new viewers understand why this is important, because you have to learn who you can trust. And there are certain large organizations you can't trust. You just should not trust them. You should take everything with a big old grain of salt. Like, skepticism in certain institutions that have proven themselves untrustworthy is a smart thing. You know, Jesus didn't just waltz into places like an idiot. You know, he had the wisdom to avoid the wolves until it was his time. And then no one took his life. He laid down his life, make no mistake about it. But only when he was ready. He laid down his life at the right time. And when people try to, conspire against him early before his time, he would do things like disappear through the crowd. You know, he wouldn't just walk into it. And he would advise his people in the same way. So, especially for where we're headed, it's important to look back over the past periodically and remember things that have happened in the past, because it helps you understand the enemy's strategies. Yeah, that's right. Johnny Thompson in the house. If it's got 3 letters, you probably shouldn't trust that organization. That's Gregory. John Thompson says, the episode I've been waiting for. Watch out for the lizard people. Yeah, Look, at this point in my life, after what I've seen, I wouldn't be surprised. Old David Icke, he's been right quite a bit of time, so what the heck. Might be spot on. And I'm not watching a David Icke video tonight, but we will jump right into it. Let me pull it up. It'll take me just a second, so sit patiently, and let's jump into it. So first, I'm going to watch a video on YouTube. I might just kind of skip through some of this stuff. It's 6 minutes. It's got maybe commercials. Are those commercials? Gosh, I hope. No, I think he split it up into chapters. The only 3-letter agency that I can think of that is good is Let's Talk Liberty. LTL. You know what I mean? But everything else. Maybe the NRA? I don't know. Not a lot is your answer. Not a lot. All right. I'm going to go to main camera and desktop video. Hey, there's my friend. Again, I don't really know this guy. But I appreciate his work. So, hey, guy who I don't know your name, but I like your shirt. Thank you for doing the work for me, and we appreciate you. I'm going to turn on desktop audio here, and let's jump into it.
So I gathered the most famous ones to share with you guys. So here they are, 10 conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. Number 1 is the fascist conspiracy. In 1933, a group of wealthy businessmen tried to install a fascist dictatorship in the United States. What's most disturbing is that the men involved were heads of organizations.
Oh, so Alexander, things like the FDA, the CDC, the WHO, the NIH. Gregory points out a good one, the WWF. I mean, at least they're honest about the deception to some degree. You know what I mean? But most organizations that just have 3 letters, not trustworthy. I haven't vetted all these, by the way, so I don't know how important these conspiracies are. I just wanted to, we'll watch it together. I'll pause and commentate on the way.
And families that still exist today, including Chase Bank, GM, Goodyear, Standard Oil, the DuPont family, and even Senator Prescott Bush. Yeah, Prescott Bush, father of George H. Bush and grandfather of George W. Bush. Well, it's a good thing that they didn't succeed and that the corruption of oil companies, banks, and the Bush family ended there.
A little bit of sarcasm. I like it. Way to go. Way to go, pal. I like this guy already. He's a friend of mine.
Yeah, that's sarcasm. Number 2 is the Guy Fawkes conspiracy. You've probably seen the Guy Fawkes mask from V for Vendetta. Same guy. In 1604, a group of Britons, including Guy Fawkes, were tired of King James' rule and conspired to blow up Parliament. They filled a room below Parliament with explosives, and they probably would have gotten away with it had one member of the conspiracy group not sent a letter to a politician talking about hypothetically blowing up Parliament. That conspirator wasn't seriously dumb enough to think that nothing would happen over sending a letter like that, was he? That's like me saying hypothetically I just pissed in your Cheerios. You gonna have a big old bite?
Sorry for the language.
Exactly. Number 3 is the MK Ultra conspiracy. In the 1950s and 70s, the CIA attempted a series of experiments involving mind control called Project MK Ultra. In an attempt to try to figure out how to control the minds of communist spies, they began probing and injecting psychedelic drugs into unwitting citizens of the United States.
I don't want to breeze over that too fast. Did you guys catch that? I'm laughing, but it's actually not funny at all. But people are like, why don't you trust government? Really? Really? Besides the, brief dance through history at what governments have been responsible for, then you have stuff like this. You see, this is why you have to. The moment, yeah, we'll do some tangents along the way. It's okay. The moment your organization adopts a view that the means justify the ends, you inevitably fall on the slippery slope problem. I mean, the people that were doing this were trying to help the world in their mind, from their perspective. But we can see it now and say, I can't believe anybody would ever think that that was a good idea. But their organization had already crossed a moral line and broken the golden rule. They're already playing in a way that they should never play. So you can't be too shocked when they've already bent the rules for their very existence. You can't be shocked when they go on to continue to bend the rules. And by the way, a free market guy, we're not claiming a utopia without government, without the state. What we're saying is theft is bad, murder is bad, extortion is bad, fraud is bad. Let's not legalize those things and make them really easy to do, relatively easy to do, because they're actually institutionalized and centralized. All we're saying is, yeah, it's going to be a scary, in a sense. Now, I believe, personally, I have no fear about it, because you can't threaten a Christian with death, which is why Christians, I believe the Christian should operate on the golden rule. Treat others like you want to be treated. That destroys the state right there. You can't have a government that uses taxation as a means to exist because it breaks the golden rule. It's theft. It breaks God's law, right? Can't believe we're still having this conversation, but here we are, 2022, still trying to establish the basic fact that taxation is in fact theft. But, but even if you took the Christianity side out of it for just the sake of discussion, so people are trying to preserve their own life, you still, when you give up liberty for safety, of course you're going to have neither. And you deserve neither. And so it's better to take the risk and freedom. And like the idea that something could go wrong. You see, that's the devil the whole time. You see, the devil is always the one that brings fear and doubt to manipulate and control you. And that's why people believe in the state. It's because of fear. I've never heard someone argue for the existence of the state outside of a fear-based argument. Not once. And I've had this discussion thousands of times. It's always the same line of reasoning, and it's always born out of fear. People don't learn that fear is not your friend. Fear attracts the attack of the devil. Well, what would we do if another nation attacked us? Oh, that sounds like fear. That sounds an awful lot like fear. Are you scared? Yes, and that's why you made a bad decision to believe the state is the only solution. Well, how would we build the roads? It sounds like you're anxious about that. It sounds like that uncertainty is causing you stress, and you'd rather just have a solution that you can see instead of trusting in the unseen. And so it's always fear. But look, MK Ultra, this is crazy. Putting LSD in people that were not, right, double blind controlled study or whatever, not aware, didn't sign up for the experiment, So
this
yikes.
resulted in people becoming...
So people get like, oh, well, the whole COVID thing is that it was in the water, right? It was snake venom, and they put it in the water, and the most dangerous part of the whole ploy was the vaccine. So the real play of the enemy was the vaccine. They needed a reason to bring the vaccine in. The mRNA vaccine was the real damaging attack, the assault on humanity. But how do you get the vaccine in people? Well, first you make them scared, and then you bring the solution. First you create the problem, and then problem, reaction, solution, right? Whatever. It's the same sort of model. So if you've seen a lot of it in the past, you're less likely to fall for it in the future. That would be my hope, at least. You'd be less likely to fall for it in the future. The next time they say, oh, there's something really scary, watch out, you'll just say, yeah, whatever, I'll take my chances. Shut up. Leave me alone. That's where, at least that's my goal in doing this broadcast, is to get you to the place where you have thick skin and you're not just so easily duped the next time. Because remember, it's not like when you look back, hindsight's always 20/20. Now every Christian is basically on the same page. COVID was a huge scam. Even if it was a real thing and people were getting hurt, they see now it's so clear that there was a massive antichrist agenda to consolidate power in a new world order, one world government. Now it's like, I mean, I can't imagine a Christian debating that now. Even every denomination is pretty much, at least that's the feedback I've gotten. I'm sure there's some woke pastors out there that still think, that still wear a mask to church and still think that the government was saving the world or whatever. But that seems to be that would be the oddball out. I think most people now understand, oh yeah, that was a massive deception. But if you remember what it was like in the very beginning of it, everybody agreed with it. There was only a few of us that were saying, hey, stop, don't go that way. Don't believe the lie. The voice of fear is a liar. So it's real easy after everybody agrees to agree as well. But I want to train all of us to be the one that stands against the crowd. And I'm not saying just distrust authority because they're authority. I'm saying identify trustworthy authority, but also identify untrustworthy authority and don't give them room in your life. Got a message from a good friend. Let's see here. Huh. Was that right now, Kyle? What were you talking about? Write it in code. You got a comment block, so it went against community standards. Oh, Facebook, always helping us. Free speech platform. Anyway, MK Ultra. I mean, it's not the only one, but it's one of the ones that's widely accepted as this happened. And that was yesterday's broadcast. Got it.
6 slipping into permanent comas and even deaths. Luckily, as far as anybody knows, they did not succeed. Or at least that's what I'm supposed to say. Number 4 is the Tuskegee syphilis conspiracy. Between 1932 and 1972, the United States government conducted an experiment called the...
By the way, in case you are hard on math, that's 40 years.
The Tuskegee syphilis experiment. They experimented using spinal taps exclusively on very poor and mostly illiterate African American males without their consent. This went...
You guys catching all that? My comment was literally just LOL, and it went against the community standards. Oh, Kyle. Man, they're railing against you, bro. They are railing against you. Let me just back that up. Make sure everybody's paying attention.
Tuskegee syphilis experiment. They experimented using spinal taps exclusively on very poor and mostly illiterate African American males without their consent. This went on for 40 years before somebody finally blew the whistle on it.
40 years before somebody finally blew the whistle. How long would it have gone on? How many of these are going on now that people just haven't blown the whistle? The bigger the state gets, this is one problem with the government, I'm telling you. It's easier in the beginning when the thing's still small enough to fight, but as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, nobody wants to blow the whistle because you'll end up like Julian Assange or whatever. You'll end up on the run for the rest of your life. You're trying to pick a fight with Leviathan. So how many of these things just don't get whistles blown on them because people are terrified? Like, oh, okay, I'm gonna die tomorrow if I tell anybody about this. You just create such a monster. It's ridiculous. First of all, I want to point out just a few things. You see how wicked this state is? I mean, how wicked the state is. Really? Greg, you had 3 flagged as well? Goodness. What is Facebook doing, man? Just picking on us. Get out of our face, Facebook. Come at me, bro. Look how wicked the state is. This went on for 40 years before somebody blew the whistle on it.
Which resulted in the National Research Act, which prevents barbaric experiments like this from being performed. Of course, instead of getting rid of these mad scientists, they kept them around and put them to work as health advisors to the president.
Yeah. Justice, right? Am I right? Hey, another interesting thing. I want you to glean this as well. When you think about conspiracies, oftentimes people get tripped up because they're like, well, how would they get away with it? Like when you think about the moon landing, which was clearly a hoax, by the way. Okay, if you're still holding on to that one, send me a private message and we'll send you. Never mind. I was going to say something that was not very Christian, and I might have Christian audience watching right now, so I better be on my best behavior here. But if you think we landed on the moon, I can't help you. But listen, people say, well, how would they get away with it? You know, the thousands of people at NASA. It's like, well, no, you know, brainiac. That's not how conspiracies work. Or whatever. That's not how deception works. Deception, you don't need the masses to know about it. You only need a very small group of people to know about it. And then everybody else is compartmentalized in their own little lane, doing their own little thing, and they have no idea the bigger picture. Look at a military operation. You think every soldier knows all the plans? No, obviously not. Like 99% of them have very little information. They know their role, they know exactly their mission, and it's on a need-to-know basis, bro. And that's all they know. So in the same way, I mean, you don't need everybody to be in on it. That's one of the silly tricks, trip up points people get caught at. You actually, and that's what I want you to see about this these 20 that we're going to talk about tonight. You don't need, even though there's thousands and thousands of people involved, they don't all understand what's happening. They're just all playing their part. Look at COVID. You think all the nurses, you think all the doctors were in on it? No, most of the doctors, most of the nurses, most of the people that were involved didn't know they were involved. They were just driving their little ship. They were just doing what they were told. They were just a cog in the machine. They weren't the ones at the top. They didn't have access to everything that was going on. They were probably motivated by a very simple thing, like, I don't want to lose my job. They were motivated by a very simple thing. Even if they saw information that was like, oh man, this medical protocol in response to a mild respiratory problem, it seems dramatic. Even if nurses started blowing the whistle in New York, if you remember that when that happened, look how fast they got squashed out. Look how fast the hammer came down so strong to squash any dissent. There were plenty of people blowing the whistle. It's not like people didn't blow the whistle. It's that there was a concerted effort to silence every voice that came against it. So now that you've lived through one with COVID, you live through that now. If you can just try to remember, it wasn't that there wasn't any whistleblowers. Many people blew the whistle. But the voices on the mainstream narrative were so much louder and more consistent, it just drowned out the other voices. But it wasn't like no one blew the whistle. Actually, there was many people. They might not have known the whole story. They might not have known the whole plan, but they saw massive problems in what was happening. They're like, we're putting people on ventilators? Are you out of your mind for shortness of breath? We're going to medically murder people for no reason. This is crazy. Inducing comas and stuff. Well, what are we doing? Because they've coughed a few times, they have shortness of breath. It was medical murder on a wide scale. And there were plenty of people that were coming against it, but most people just didn't want to lose their job. They're thinking about their small lane. I got mouths to feed, I got bills to pay, and I'm going to go along because I don't want to lose my job. So it's not that actually complicated to figure out how these things work. You have a very small group of deceivers that have an agenda. Usually it's the love of money. Surprise, surprise. Not a mystery. Well, why would NASA do it? Probably because they have $1 billion, a lot of money coming in every year to do Photoshop. Probably, if I had to guess. Yeah, but more reasons, but that'd be like number one on my list. Why would Big Pharma do it? Well, have you seen their balance sheet? Have you seen their net income statement? That might have something to do with it. Just a guess. It's a wild guess. But I'm just throwing it out there because it seems like the love of money might actually be the root of all kinds of evil, just like the Bible says. So, people have incentives, and you follow the money to figure out basically what's going on. They can tell you whatever they want you to whatever they want you to think their motivation is, but figure out who's getting filthy rich behind the scenes, and you have an insight. Maybe not the whole picture, but you have at least if you're Sherlock Holmes, you have a starting place, right? Like, oh, that person's going to be enriched beyond like their wildest dreams. Well, maybe they have something to do with this whole thing.
Shout out to Obamacare. Number 5 is the 1919 World Series conspiracy. In 1919, 8 players from the Chicago White Sox threw a World Series game against the Cincinnati Reds in the most famous scandal in baseball history. Interestingly, they were never charged with anything since throwing a game is technically not a crime, but they were banned from the league a year later when it was discovered. This is only the most famous example though. There have been literally thousands of cases of players that have conspired to throw games. This is the type of thing that you better make sure you're getting paid really well for, or at least enough to cover your medical bills when the bookies come looking for you to cover the bets they had to pay out. Number 6.
Again, you see how this is a small example, but think about the dynamics of that situation. You're about to put a bet that the team that's the underdog is going to win, right? Which means the favored team, let's say it's 5-1 odds that they're going to win. You're going to put a bet that they're going to lose the game. But before you place that bet, and it's going to be a big bet, and you're going to get 5-1 odds or whatever, you're going to have a huge amount of money coming in. You go to one of the players and say, hey, what do you make per year? One of the star players. And they're like, I make $2 million. It's like, well, how about $10 million in one night? How does that feel? Like, that feels pretty good. Okay, here's what you need to do. Suck this game. Miss a whole bunch of shots, lead to a bunch of turnovers, drop the ball, right? It's not that crazy to get these kinds of things. It's not that crazy to set them up, and then you place that bet, and anyway, you can see when I say game, I mean game theory game. In a small game like that, you can see how easily it can work. You don't need a whole bunch of people. You need a few people playing it close to the chest. And of course, in a baseball game, you need several people because, baseball's a little different. But basketball, you really only need to get to 1 or 2 of the star players, and that's it. That'll turn the whole game, right? 1 or 2 of the all-stars turns the whole game, especially if you're talking about, the big names and the big games. So, these are times that they got caught for whatever reason. But think of how often this happens. People just don't get caught. Probably not something to laugh about, but anyway, let's keep it going.
This is the Snow White conspiracy. In the 1970s, the Church of Scientology perpetrated the largest infiltration of the US government in history, called Operation Snow White. Their goal was to destroy every document that made them look bad, and ultimately over 5,000 Scientologists were successful in wiretapping and burglarizing 136 organizations, agencies, and foreign embassies. Damn, Scientology, you scary. First you infiltrate government, then Hollywood? What's next? Fast food joints? Don't you be putting no placentas in my chicken nuggets, man. Damn. Number 7 is the Illuminati conspiracy. One of the most famous conspiracies talked about today in popular culture are the Illuminati. Although thought to be a myth by some, the Order of the Illuminati were a very powerful organization that did in fact once exist. Founded in 1776, the official story is that they've either been disbanded or destroyed, but some people believe they still exist today. And not only that, but some people believe that they control half of the world's wealth through the Rothschild dynasty, and that they are the ones behind many major world events. But I really doubt this. I mean, if they really were everywhere, I think we would notice. Crap. Number 8 is the CIA drug running conspiracy. In the 1980s, the CIA directly aided Nicaraguan drug traffickers.
Again, think about this. Think about what you're about to hear. This is crazy. This is the stuff you think that would, it would just be like a good movie. But actually, if you go back to the individual actors in the game, it makes sense. It's not that surprising.
Who were selling cocaine in Los Angeles and used the money to fund Nicaraguan Contras. Known as the Dark Alliance, this wasn't discovered until about a decade later in 1996. Damn, a whole decade? The CIA must be pretty good at keeping people quiet. Speaking of the CIA, I just got some inside information about how they are doing things that nobody knows. And that is happening right now. Spread the word. Number 9 is the Operation Valkyrie conspiracy. Near the end of World War II, when it became clear that Nazi Germany was in a losing fight, a group of Nazi traitors conspired to assassinate Hitler. Unfortunately, one conspirator decided that he would do it himself and exploded a bomb in Hitler's conference room, except surprisingly, Hitler survived with only minor injuries. Because of this, Operation Valkyrie never went into effect and all the conspirators were killed. I mean, luckily Nazi Germany still lost the war, but damn people, if you have a plan that's that big, make sure you work together together. Teamwork makes the dream work. And finally, number 10, the Bohemian Grove Conspiracy. For years, conspiracy theorists have said that the world's richest and most powerful men have met once a year in the woods to worship a giant owl. And as it turns out, it's true. Located in California, there's an exclusive men's-only club called the Bohemian Club, which hosts a yearly gathering of the most powerful men in the world. It's incredibly secretive and nobody really knows what goes on during the 2 to 3 week gathering. Did I mention that they have rituals that take place in front of a shrine of a giant owl? Like, I get that the owl represents wisdom and knowledge, but couldn't they have chosen a more manly mascot for an all-men's club, like, I don't know, an old-time boxer or Chuck Norris or a giant Chuck mustache? Norris. Just saying. And that's it for this time, guys. If you enjoyed this video...
Alright, we'll watch the second one. Let me get it queued up. Any that don't make the list, let me know in the comments what you think. And alright, here's number 2.
Conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. Part 2. Number 1 is the Operation Northwoods conspiracy. Many people are distrusting of their government, believing that they sometimes carry out secret operations under the guise of being the target of an attack, when in reality they're the ones that are deceiving the masses to further their own ulterior motives. Known as false flag operations, in 1962, one was proven to be true. Operation Northwoods was a proposition by the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Department of Defense that outlined a plan to incite war between the US and Cuba. The operation called for the CIA themselves to perform acts of terrorism against their own American citizens, blaming Cuba and its communist leader Fidel Castro.
So when you hear about stuff like this, again, like I'm trying to be sensitive because some of you on the broadcast, I kind of know where you're at, right? This is not news to you. And you're like, yeah, duh. But some of you may have never heard of this before. You may have gone to, and I'm not trying to make fun of you. I'm not belittling you. I know there was a time where I had never heard of this before. Are you catching this? So you say, oh, that was just in the past. They wouldn't do that again. Well, again, when you see something like 9/11 and all the massive holes, all the problems with the official narrative, and then, well, yeah, but why would they do that? Why would they hurt American citizens? Why? Because it rallied an entire country to support a war with a different country? Like, what? Because of a very strong emotional response, a desire for justice. But fear, again, the same sorts of ingredients come in. So can you be certain, especially when you have limited knowledge to what's going on at the top in those circumstances. You're looking at you're just a Sherlock Holmes. You're just looking at the evidence. You're looking at basically the story, and you're trying to kind of put pieces together. Okay, you have 2 planes hit. Which there's different theories on that. Were they even planes? Were they holographs? I think they were planes. I think they were remote control planes or something. Or maybe they were actual passenger planes. To me, it's like that part of it is not a hill to die on for me. You can form your own opinions, and that's fine. And you might be better informed than me, by the way. I haven't spent a lot of time on that side because to me, it's just not as for whatever reason, it doesn't jump out as me as like we got to figure this part out. But what we can figure out is those buildings were superstructures. They were steel superstructures. They would never fall down based on a plane crash. Not in a million years. Not even close. Especially if the planes hit them at the top. The base of those buildings are so strong. I mean, a plane is built in a relatively speaking like a car. It would the steel in those buildings would shred the plane apart. It's like it's hard to even, not even close. But then, okay, you might say, well, hey, it was just a freak thing, and, no one had ever conducted an experiment like that, so we can't be sure. It's confusing. Yeah, but then you got World Trade Center 7, and that puts the whole thing to rest. You have a 50-story building that falls at free fall speed, like a controlled demolition, into its own footprint symmetrically, and no plane even hit it. And buildings within the fall radius of the Twin Towers that were closer than World Trade Center 7 were still standing. So it wasn't like the debris that fell structurally messed it up. No, there was a few fires. And it's all caught on tape. And like BBC announced that it fell before it fell. like all this weird, all these massive holes. And of course, the first responders are saying we heard all these explosions, pop, 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 and then it fell. Like, there's all this mountain of evidence that it was a controlled demolition. Most of which is just your eyes, what you saw happen that day, because we were all watching it. It's what a controlled demolition looks like. It's when every major steel structural beam has a, what do they call it, a global simultaneous collapse. It's not like one part started to pancake over or whatever. It's clearly not what the official narrative is. And then you start filling in the gaps and you say, okay, well, if they lied to us on why, because look, if they just said, well, let's, if the mainstream media said, well, clearly that was a controlled demolition, let's figure out who was responsible for it, then we have a real case, right? Then we continue down and figure out maybe it was an act of terror or something, but it was more, because look, if it's a controlled demolition, how long does it take to set those up? How much organization, how much inside organization do you need? You need so much coordination. You can't have a controlled demolition on buildings like that without anybody knowing it. For weeks, it takes to set up all the detonations necessary for that to happen. You're talking about a massive operation. And the fact that the guy who owns the buildings just took out a nice insurance policy that included acts of terrorism, all this stuff, it's like you start to just, okay, that's an overwhelming amount of evidence that says at least the official narrative isn't true. But then you know about stuff like this in the past, like Operation Northwoods, where your own government, for a other reason, and again, they might actually think that the means justify the ends. Like, we need to take out Saddam Hussein. How do we do it? We need to rally up support about a war with brown people. Okay. Let's, because it wasn't even the same group of people, by the way, which is the craziest thing. I mean, I remember I was in high school, but I guess I had an Israeli dad, so I had a Middle Eastern context at home. So, Afghanistan is different than Iraq, but like most Americans, I guess, didn't know that or something, like, oh yeah, I think it's the same place. They look similar, but I don't know. It's just a weird thing. It was so weird that like it was a miracle how fast they knew exactly who all the pilots were, all the terrorists were, that Osama bin Laden was behind the whole thing. Wasn't that just a miracle? How fast they knew all that? How fast all the mainstream media conformed on a single narrative? So now you live through something like that and you say, okay, well, that was clearly deception. And then people go to the why. People go to the why right away. Like, well, why would they do it? Well, who made tremendous amounts of money by a war in the Middle East, by a U.S. military presence in the Middle East? Right? Who made copious amounts of money? Halliburton, oil companies. It's not that mysterious. It's not that hard to figure out why anybody would want to do it. The thing is, people think, well, no one could be that soulless. Well, no. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. People love money. They're greedy. They want to have more. Once they have $1 billion, they want to have 10 billion. It's like it's insatiable lust after greed and money, and it leads them to do things that, you got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet. That's the way they think about it. It's just human lives are just a piece on the chessboard, and they're going to stand before God for that. I'm not saying there won't be justice. I'm just saying it's not that hard to imagine why people do this stuff. So they wanted a war in Cuba, and so they made it happen, right? False flag operation. So is 9/11 a false flag operation? In my book, 99.99999% yes. Do I leave room that I could be off? Yeah, I guess so. But, you got to use your own brain. But what happened as a result? We went into something called the War on Terror. Think about that pitch. Think about that sales pitch. We need an enemy, but we can't have an enemy that we can actually defeat. Let's have an enemy that we can never actually defeat. A perpetual war that just goes on forever. How do we do that? Well, war with an idea. Oh, that's good. Go to war with an idea. You'll have a perpetual war. Convenient.
Listed methods of terrorism included shootings in major cities, hijacking planes, blowing up American ships near Guantanamo Bay, and sinking refugee boats leaving Cuba. This disturbing plan was presented to President John F. Kennedy, who outright rejected it, and even removed the chair of the Joint Chiefs from his position. However, some have taken it even further, believing that Kennedy's unwillingness to carry out such operations was one of the reasons behind his assassination. Number 2 is the Operation Paperclip conspiracy. After World War II, there were whispers that the government was looking the other way in hiring Nazis to work within the ranks of their own government. And while many brushed this off as crazy, as it turns out, it wasn't. In 1945, the United States Office of Strategic Services and the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, or JIOA, began recruiting captured German scientists, engineers, and technicians. Codenamed Operation Paperclip, it succeeded in hiring upwards of 1,500 Germans, the goal of which was to prevent the Soviet Union and the UK from gaining their expertise, as well as to hinder Germany's military research progress. Now, publicly, President Harry Truman approved the program so long as no former Nazis were recruited. However, those restrictions proved to have rendered ineligible most of the leading scientists from whom the JIOA had identified for recruitment. So, their solution? Create false identities for these ex-Nazis and recruit them into the ranks of their own government.
So again, what's the takeaway there? Well, we know the public won't go for this. So we just need to say what the public wants to hear and then just do whatever we want and just get away with it.
Government. Number 3 is the Gulf of Tonkin conspiracy.
Oh,
as many as 42 false flag operations have been admitted by governmental organizations up to this day, and the Gulf of Tonkin incident is yet another example.
As many as 42 have been admitted. That's what's been admitted. Okay. So yeah, does this stuff happen? Probably so much more than you'd like to think. That's right. War on Terror brought in the Patriot Act, which stripped us of our privacy and freedom to keep us in the name of keeping us safe. Buck said, "That's right. That's right." They call it, and the nerve to call it the Patriot Act. What the nerve? It's like they're mocking patriots. The most unpatriotic piece of legislation imaginable. And they call it the Patriot Act. That's what they do. They just laugh right in your face. Because most people it's not even that most people aren't smart enough to get it. It's that they know, this is the great problem, again, we call it public choice economics. It deals with this problem, is that people are rationally ignorant. It makes no sense for one person to spend their whole life figuring all this stuff out and incurring all the cost of all that data gathering and knowledge acquisition for what? For the benefit of one voice and 300 million people or whatever. So they know that they're playing a game that no one else is playing. They're fully invested in their game. But we're invested in just trying to do what's best for our families, working with all our hearts, trying to live an honest and good life. So, but they'll mock, the peons straight to their face because and call things like that the Patriot Act. What a crazy.
On August 2nd, 1964, a U.S. destroyer ship named the USS Maddox was reported to have been attacked by 3 North Vietnamese torpedo boats. The attack occurred off the coast of Vietnam in an area known as the Gulf of Tonkin. The USS Maddox engaged in battle and defeated the torpedo boats, killing 4 and injuring 6 Vietnamese crew members. Further escalating things, just 2 days later, a second attack occurred in the same area. These events became the precursor to the Vietnam War, except that neither of them ever really happened. Years later, declassified reports were released that not only did American ships fire at absolutely nothing, but the second battle with the Vietnamese was reported with the sole purpose to escalate tensions. It was discovered that the government staged the entire event as an excuse to enter Vietnam and kill as many communists as possible. This false flag
Think about from Vietnam's perspective, like, hey, nothing actually happened. Trying to get over, hey guys, they're seeing the news in the United States come out like, this skirmish happening in the Gulf of Tonkin, and then of course the U.S. is completely oblivious, like, rightfully so. Again, rationally so. I'm not saying you should know all this. I think you have to walk by the Spirit, though. See, the Spirit will, even if you don't know the facts, you can know if somebody's a liar and if you should trust somebody. By the Spirit of God, He'll guide you in all truth. This is why Spirit, the true church is under constant attack from the state. They don't mind dead religion. The state doesn't mind the form of godliness that denies the power of God. But what the state can't have is from their perspective, if you get filled with the Holy Ghost, you are totally uncontrollable because you have the Spirit of God living on the inside of you, and God knows everything. He's all places at all times. And you might, in your mind, not be able to decode the message, but in your spirit, you'll have a red light. You'll have a check. You'll say, I don't trust you. I don't know why, but something about you just have a punchable face. That face you have just is very punchable, and I don't trust a word you're saying. And see, when COVID started, and I go back to that one just because it's the fresh one we just all lived through, but, the next one will come soon enough, I'm sure of it. Don't fall for it. Pray in the Spirit always. Be filled with the Spirit of God. It's such a practical help to you. It'll keep you out of trouble. It'll keep you out of harm's way. I think all of us would say we'd rather live for the truth, even if it costs us our life. We'd rather stand for what's right, even if it costs us our very life. But that's how you do it, is you get filled with the Spirit of truth. You don't need to learn everything about everything. It's not an academic thing. It's not a knowledge acquisition thing where you have to go and learn all of these things. I'm showing you these examples just to prove, because some people have never been introduced to this. They actually trust their government. A lot of people trust their government, believe it or not, which is baffling to me. Because remember, the government, it's like there's no such thing as the government, in a sense. That's just like there's no such thing as a forest. There's just trees. There's an abstraction we call the forest, which is really just a bunch of trees. But if you want to you can't go touch a forest. You can go touch a tree. You can't go touch a government. You can go and meet individual actors in a system. And they're going to always play that game to the best of their for their self-interest. And that's true for everybody. That's true for me too, in the church. As a pastor, I play the game that's best for my self-interest. So do you, so does everybody. There's nothing wrong with that. When the game is set up correctly, it's a win-win for everybody. For example, in the kingdom of God, I'm storing up treasures in heaven. The way I do it is I lay down my life on earth. I give physical needs, physical material wealth to those in need, knowing that my Father, again, I'm playing the game to win. I'm trying to maximize profit in heaven. But because of that eternal perspective, it actually cleanses my heart and purifies my motivations, where I can have real pure motivations on earth. But make no mistake about it, I'm still a self-interested player. My game just changed. And so when you put people in a worldly system like government, and they have all these perverse incentives where they can use self-interest, where the motivations of self-interest, they can use the state to gain unfair advantages and over their fellow man, it's going to lead to problems. Sonia Fandini, what a hot woman, commenting on the video. John 8:44. That's right.
Operation may have claimed as many as 211,000 Americans' lives within the Vietnam War. Number 4 is the COINTELPRO conspiracy.
Let me just read this hot woman's comment right now. Jesus said he was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. That's right. And you're supposed to resist the devil, which means you have to recognize his voice. Not that you meditate on it all the time. No, if you just know the shepherd's voice, then you'll spot the fraud immediately. If you just focus on the shepherd's voice, if you just focus on Jesus, that's why the state, it's so foreign to me, because it's so foreign to Jesus. Jesus would never force you against your will to pay for something that you don't want to pay for. Jesus would never force you against your will to be involved in war and abortion and the LGBTQ agenda or whatever else. He wouldn't force you to do something good for yourself. He wouldn't force you to feed your body correctly. He lets you go, and Jesus is freedom. He honors your free choice. So that's why anybody that goes into the state apparatus, I'm like, especially in a leadership role, it's antithetical to Christianity. And of course, history is not on the side of the state when it comes to the church, and the state are always at odds. The organization that destroys and murders Christians is the state, historically at least. Could it change in the future? Well, that's that I guess we haven't seen that yet. But what I know is the scripture says that the government shall be upon his shoulders, and to the increase of his government and peace there will be no end. When man steps into that seat that Jesus deserves, things do not go well because it's impure motives. But Jesus Christ is the only true king that actually governs in total justice, total equity every time.
PRO, which stands for Counterintelligence Program, was a secret espionage operation by the FBI that investigated any groups or persons who threatened the authority of the U.S. government. The program started in August of 1956 and focused on groups like the Civil Rights Movement, Vietnam War protesters, the Black Power movement, and feminists. Targeted group members would receive anonymous phone calls or documents with incriminating information on their peers. Some would even be wiretapped, and some were audited. Even powerful targets were affected, including Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. But what's most scary about this program is that it would have continued indefinitely, except that in 1971, documents exposing it were stolen and given to the media, after which it scaled back its operations. However, notice that I said scaled back, not ended. There are rumors that versions of this program continue today under the guise of anti-terrorism measures. Imagine how much easier it is for the government to do this now with everyone openly transmitting information via cell phone. Number 5 is the Operation Mockingbird conspiracy. Many Americans believe that the media continues to be heavily influenced to present the views of a small group of people, and they just might be right. Operation Mockingbird was a CIA effort to control major American media outlets between the 1950s and 1970s. The program was started by Frank Wisner, director of plans for the CIA, and in 1947 he began recruiting leading American journalists into a propaganda network to help present the CIA's views to the masses. Head journalists at the New York Times, CBS, and Newsweek were recruited through both bribes and being put on the payroll. By 1953, Mockingbird had journalists at 25 different news agencies and was finally taken over by CIA Director Alan Dulles. While it was active, Mockingbird managed to ruin the careers of the CIA's political opponents, spy on other journalists, censor damaging reports, and promote the fight against communism. It was officially ended in 1976, but many of the CIA's news media relationships have remained intact even to this day. Number 6 is the Watergate conspiracy. The Watergate scandal is the name of the infamous political conspiracy that was uncovered in 1973 and even forced.
Do you guys know the president who was president during all the NASA moon missions? His name is slipping my mind.
President Nixon to resign. On June 17, 1972, a security guard caught 5 burglars.
He probably wasn't like this guy who was a total sleazebag who got caught red-handed. He was probably like a stand-up guy who was trustworthy. But I just can't remember.
At the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C., where the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee were located. Unbeknownst to the public, the burglars were actually sent by Nixon's administration to repair some wiretap devices that they had planted in an earlier break-in. After the release of multiple tapes incriminating Nixon, he was forced to hand over office and nearly got him impeached before he decided to quit himself. Ultimately, he was pardoned by President Gerald Ford in September of 1974, but 48 of his top employees weren't so lucky and received jail time for their involvement. Number 7 is the North Korea kidnapping conspiracy.
That's right, Buck. That's right. Jesus is a perfect gentleman. Never force, only love. He'll literally let people choose hell. That's how much he honors free choice. The government won't even let you choose, who you'll let cut your hair without them giving you permission. Did you guys catch that about Nixon? Again, I know Let's Talk Liberty has some young people coming in. The older folks know about that. But you should too. Just know these sleazeballs. He would have never, just like Bill Clinton. I'll never forget Bill Clinton. The Monica Lewinsky scandal. The guy looked right at everybody in the world and said, "I did not do that. I did not have sexual relations with that woman." And then he just got caught to where he couldn't lie anymore. And he was like, "I'm sorry." Like, politicians are sleazeballs. No fear of God. Can stand up in front of the whole world on camera and just lie. And Nixon wouldn't have confessed if the evidence wasn't overwhelming. And again, you wonder why that whole thing happened. Well, this is this is a point I want to make about the last two. I think it was number 6. He shared about the feminist and the civil rights thing. Sometimes it's a psyop, right? It's psychological warfare. It's a psychological operation. Sometimes they play both sides to make you believe there's a real fight between good and evil, but really they're controlling the outcome the whole time. Okay, this is one of the great, very effective strategies of these psychological operations. What do I mean? For all we know, the Watergate scandal was something. There might have been a much bigger thing, like the NASA hoax. There might have been a much bigger thing that they needed to take. This is like if you've and I've been in trouble before with like the law, and I was a liar. Before my salvation experience with Jesus, I lived in the world. I sold drugs. I hurt people. I didn't care. I had no fear of God. So I lied. I cheated. I would have done anything to get out of a situation. And what you would do often if you really got caught. So if you're a criminal, you know what I'm talking about. If you really get caught and you're about to get caught for something big and you have like 9 charges against you, you know what you'll do is you'll actually admit to one of the smaller ones as a strategy to take the attention away from the bigger stuff. It's just it's a very common strategy criminals use. So let's say you have make it real obvious. Let's say you have a police dog searching your car or whatever, or they're gonna search and they say, well, you better let us know where the drugs are, and you got like 10 pounds of Colombian Bam Bam. Sorry, I had to put a shout out to my beautiful wife, who's from Colombia, and she gets irritated that all the Americans know Colombia is the place where cocaine comes from. But there's a lot of beautiful stuff that Colombia exports, including my beautiful wife and my family. But let's say you had a whole bunch of cocaine, you had a whole bunch of heroin, you had a whole bunch of LSD, all big drugs that are going to get you in a lot of trouble. And then you had like marijuana as well, which was still frowned upon, still illegal at the time, but just lesser of a sentence. And they're threatening you with the drug dog, and you kind of see where this is going. Basically, the criminal starts to say, "Ooh, I better admit to this, maybe. I can get, yeah, I did that." And they seem real compliant with law enforcement. They seem like they're telling the truth, but they're actually lying about the much bigger thing. So just remember, anytime the media says, "Oh, we have released documents," like the recent, when Roe v. Wade was going to potentially be overturned, and that was released, I started immediately getting suspicious. Like, I could smell it in the air. Oh, it was just conveniently released. See, to me, everything that's released and that comes out through mainstream media, I already know it's just a way. It's distract. It's classic misdirection. Look over here. Look over here. Let me get on the camera. Look over here. Look over here, and we're going to do something over here that you're not focused on. Classic misdirection. So when stuff like Watergate's coming out at the national level, you got to ask what's behind the scenes. What's really happening? Until people start actually going to jail, I just don't. I don't know. I don't believe it. So Nixon, all of the moon landing missions were just happened to be during his presidency. And he's a super trustworthy guy. So
Many citizens of various nations around the world are skeptical of their governments, and North Korea is certainly no exception. Between 1977 and 1983, Japanese citizens began mysteriously disappearing from the Japanese west coast around the city of Niigata. Although there were whispers that the North Korean government was involved, they adamantly denied any involvement. However, it was later discovered that the North Korean government actually kidnapped and imprisoned as many as 13 Japanese citizens. However, Japan claims that the number is actually 17, but according to records of Japanese disappearances in towns near the coast, the number could very well be in the hundreds. And unbelievably, this theory was actually confirmed by former North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong-il in 2002. The official reasons behind the random abductions are still unknown to this day, but some theorists believe that they were used to give identities to Korean spies or to teach them Japanese. Number 8 is the Nayara testimony conspiracy. On October 10th, 1990, Nayara El Sabah, a 15-year-old girl, gave a touching testimony.
Okay, so this one's relevant. This one's very relevant. Look at this strategy. Listen to this strategy. Have you guys ever heard about this one? Listen to this strategy that they're using. Emotional manipulation.
To the Congressional Human Rights Caucus, in which she emotionally described atrocities that were committed by Iraqi soldiers. She testified to a story of soldiers committing horrendous acts to young citizens in the Al Adan hospital where she volunteered. This story not only helped sway public opinion towards favoring helping Kuwait in the Gulf War, but it was used by the United States senators as well as President H.W. Bush as support for their involvement in the war. Originally, she had only given her first name in her testimony. However, in 1992, her last name was released and she was exposed as the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the US. Her testimony was ultimately exposed as a lie conceived by the Citizens for a Free Kuwait and produced by the American Public Relations Agency Hill and Knowlton. Number 9 is the prohibition
Crazy, right? But that in today's ecosystem, with the dumbing down of America, with public education and people's ability to critically think at an all-time low, all they need is the emotional game. You know, people are not even connecting the dots anymore. Like they've lost the ability to connect the dots, it seems. So really, all you need to do is play the emotional cards. You need to bring out one person. You know, I saw stuff. Oh gosh, I'm not even gonna talk about it, but recent horrific events, but you notice that it's like almost all the conversation is focused around these real emotional things, and I just doubt if any of it's true at all, because of stuff like this. They've done this in the past. If they've done it in the past, will they do it in the future? Probably. The devil doesn't change his tune. He has the same. He's a liar. He speaks his native language, like my wife put in that. That's right, Buck Clinton. It depends upon what the meaning of is. Yeah. Okay, bud. You know, Clinton, man. I'll never forget that, because I was a boy, and I still believed in politicians, right? I mean, to some degree, you're a child. You just somebody's talking. They look pretty convincing. At that time, I wasn't filled with God's Spirit. You know, I was. You know, when was that? Anyway, I was little, but I remember. I don't know if you remember. They at that time, you know, with O.J. Simpson, everything was broadcast on TV. You only had a few channels, and everybody was just huddled around the TV watching the same stuff over and over again. You know, so it's like all of us were focused on the Clinton thing, and the whole world saw the guy just stand up and lie, and then have to come back and just get caught. He never like confessed because he felt sorry and he had a conscience and like his heart was heavy, right? He never confessed because of the fear of God. He confessed because he just got caught. Just got straight up caught. Can't deny anymore. He probably, to the very last moment, he's just a pathological liar. To the very last moment, he was probably like, I think we can still spin it. And they're like, Bill, we got to just go with it. I mean, they got us, man. They pinned us down. The DNA, Bill, it's on the dress, bro. We can't spin it anymore. But they probably tried to. And my point in saying that is think of the politicians today. You know, if they can spin it, they will. And so that's when someone just gets caught red-handed. Well, think of how hard it is to catch someone red-handed. right? It doesn't happen as often.
Conspiracy. The American prohibition on alcoholic beverages, which lasted from 1920 to 1933, held some dark secrets involving the US government and the poisoning of booze supplies. After prohibition began, people took to redistilling industrial-grade alcohol to make it drinkable. To combat this, the government began adding several poisonous chemicals to alcohol to prevent them from drinking it. And boy, did it work. In fact, it worked so well that it may have led to upwards of 10,000 poisoning deaths of illegal alcohol-consuming Americans. The government had completely failed in their effort to discourage drinkers and instead wound up killing thousands of their own people. This shocking revelation was discovered by Professor Deborah Plum in her research for a book about poison and was released immediately to the media. And number 10 is the Big Brother conspiracy. Being watched by the government is no longer just a theory. It has been openly revealed that government institutions around the world.
Yeah, we know about that one. And again, what are your juicy conspiracies out there that you think ought to have made the list but didn't? I'd like to hear from you. For me, the moon is the one that I like to joke about the most because it's just so funny. I mean, we should probably do. Would you guys like to see your old pal Lucas go to like a strip mall at some point just for fun and interview people, like man on the street interviews, to see what people think? Like get just kind of cultural, like a pulse on where people are at. I think I'd like to do that. I think it'd be fun. So I'll probably take Pastor Judah with me. We'll probably hit like a crowded place with a big sign that says, "We want to interview you, 10 questions if you or something to draw people in." And then just ask them some questions. I think you'll find with the moon, and a lot of people that I talk to distrust government. So I'm actually curious to see what the results would be. But I would bet most people believe that we flew a spaceship through space and landed on the moon. I bet most people believe that. What do you think? Where are you at? Be honest in the comments. Are you 100% sure we didn't go? Are you 100% sure we did go? Are you like 50-50? Is it a coin flip? Where are you at? I'm going to wrap it up tonight. I just want, the point of this, and we talked about this before, why does it matter? Like for the Christian, why does it matter? For the season that we're living in, for the end time generation, why does it matter to be able to think critically and to be able to spot deception? Because it's really what it's about, is being able to spot deception. What I don't want you to do is get all worried and nervous and what is that word? Where you're paranoid beyond all reason and you can't operate. No, keep your eyes on Jesus and move forward in faith. The devil is all bark and no bite. We have the authority on the earth. The church of the Lord Jesus Christ wins. The state is not in charge. They might think they're in charge. They might be in charge of the world system, but you're exempt from the world system. As a citizen of the kingdom of heaven, so Buck says JFK just died last year at the age of 103. Yep. I believe JFK Jr. is alive too. Interesting. If you have any good videos, send them my way. I'd check it out. And some people say, well, what's the whole point of all these conspiracies? And again, we made this point before, but just for the new viewers on Let's Talk Liberty, if you can see in the spiritual realm, you will actually see coordination. The devil has an actual agenda, and the conspiracies or whatever the massive deception is aligning to that agenda. Whether it's aliens, which are really demons, right? Which are building a narrative, getting ready for the Great Tribulation, getting ready for that period. They're already planting seeds in people's consciousness to where there's already an explanation for what happens when the rapture happens. There's already a preloaded why behind the rapture. The world will be ready to give an explanation. So you can see, so you have all of these deceptions, but they're all leading to a one world government, the New World Order, a complete loss of freedom for your common person, and total enslavement, right? They're in a one world currency where you can't buy or sell without the mark of the beast. It's all headed in that direction. So, oh yes, Sonia B just reminded me. I did say I was going to answer that question. You hot woman. You know what though? I'm going to do it fresh. I'm going to do it fresh for you, Charlie. Sorry about that. I gave you my word, but it's not. I wouldn't do it justice. It's actually a great question, and it needs to be a longer response. So, Lord willing, tomorrow we'll hit that. But thank you, Sonia B, for reminding me. But conspiracy people, we get a bad rap sometimes because we're like connecting all these dots, and the mistake we make, I think, just my opinion on this, is that we're thinking that people are the ones orchestrating these really complex. Now, I'm not doubting that there's people actors. There's definitely people actors, but usually they're just doing, they're just motivated by the love of money, the love of power, right? They're motivated by they don't have an evil plan to take over the world. They just have I want to get filthy rich and control and built up on ego and whatever. They're lusting after power and money. But see, the person that's kind of spiritually sensitive, they have that sense of discernment. They see all the connected dots and they assume that there's a personality behind the deception. And they're actually right. What they're sensing is the devil. And they're seeing there actually is a puppet master behind everything. But instead of a little, a white guy with a little white mustache with a monocle or whatever, instead of that, it's actually demon spirits that have an actual agenda and are moving us, that are trying to accomplish certain things. So, why is it important? Is know the seasons, know what's happened in the past enough to where you will spot a fraud in the future. And of course, in the Holy Spirit, you don't have to worry, you don't have to fear. It's such a simple life to walk with God. And I praise God for that. Don't you praise God for that? That He didn't make it complicated. You didn't have to go read 1,000 books to have success in Christianity. You don't have to memorize the whole Bible. You don't have to. No, you know what you need to do? You need to know His voice and follow Him. And He's not the voice of fear. He's not the voice of pressure or stress or manipulation or condemnation. He brings the fruit of the Spirit. And just like a child, you can hear His voice and just trust Him. Simply obey and trust Him. Never let the voice of fear control you. Never be manipulated by fear. And every one of these deceptions, every one, is rooted in fear. Without exception. I've never seen one of these deceptions that is not born out of fear. And of course, COVID fit the bill just like all the other ones. But now that you know, and I hope this broadcast has helped you a bit, maybe just turn. I don't want to waste too much of your time. I don't want you to go down rabbit trails for months figuring all these stuff out. It's actually not that important. Just know the general formula, if you will, the outline of these deceptions. Just kind of know the forms they typically take. The emotional, pulling on your heartstrings, that was one of the most interesting ones. Put a young girl, all of us are going to see that, and then we're not going to be able to think critically and rationally. It's going to be harder to think because she tells this gut-wrenching story about all this sexual perversion and abuse that's happening in Iraq. And of course, all it's doing is it's pulling us emotionally to make a decision that we're being manipulated. Anger, rage, it's preying on our sense of justice. But the problem is, it was all a lie. It was fabricated. It was just made up. It was theater to control. So that was a really interesting one. Obviously, MK Ultra, the Tuskegee experiments. Those are things you can't believe. Things that I get out of those are like they were. Obviously the people had no idea that it was happening to them. It lasted decades. It wasn't like a week. It lasted 40 years, the Tuskegee experiments. I mean, think about that. That's like people going in and out of their job. That's people retiring, still going. And then somebody blew the whistle. So think of how many are going right now that just there's no whistleblowers because they fear, the fear of man traps them. So Love y'all. Be blessed. Remember, don't worry about your life and don't fear. The point of this broadcast is not to cause you to fear. It's not to cause you even to start looking for the Antichrist. It's just to wisen us up a bit, because they're going to try it again. Nothing to fear. Jesus wins. We know the end of the story. We've read the end of the book. We win. We only have reason to rejoice. We only have reason to hope. Faith, hope, and love, the greatest of these is love. So let's get out there and be the light. Just never let fear drive your ship. Never be manipulated or controlled by fear or pressure. No matter how many people in the media are saying something's true, understand it's not your first rodeo. There's nothing new under the sun. They're trying the same thing they've tried in the past, and don't fall for it. If enough of us stand, you don't need everybody. You just need a passionate, anointed group, a remnant, to change the whole world. And that's what we are. Amen. Love y'all. Have a blessed day. Join us tomorrow, Wintersmith Park at 9:15. We'll start with some prayer and worship, do communion, and then we'll go into Daily Bread at 10 a.m. sharp. Hopefully you'll join us. We'll see you then. Love you. God bless you. Oh, wait, let me go back to this real fast. Hopefully you've enjoyed this installment of 20 conspiracies that were proven to be true. If you have questions, concerns, hey, if you want to send me your favorite conspiracy, go to letstalklibertytoday.com and you can submit a form. I love hearing from you guys, by the way. Everybody that's messaged on Odyssey, Rumble, Gab. If you're watching on Gab, I'm bad at checking the comments on Gab, and I ignored someone. I had this precious sister in Christ, send me such an encouraging message about what the broadcast has done, and I didn't respond to it in like a month because the way Gab works is there's two platforms. So all my Gab people, I'm not trying to make excuses. This was bad management on my part, so sorry. But there's Gab TV, and then there's Gab.com, and I just check Gab TV and upload. I don't necessarily go to Gab.com and check, and that's where the messages come in. So sorry that I ignored you. That was a mistake. But God bless you. Have an awesome day. Grace and peace. See you tomorrow. Give the devil hell in Jesus' name.
So I